Welcome to SolderSmoke, a podcast by radio amateurs with a focus on homebrew electronics. We get together on the internet to swap ideas about radio construction projects. Our website is www.soldersmoke.com. Please send feedback to SolderSmoke, that's one word, at yahoo.com. So, as we step away from our soldering irons and oscilloscopes, please join us for another edition of SolderSmoke.
Good morning. It's Sunday, the 8th of June, 2008. That makes this SolderSmoke 85. And I think we have a real good episode for you this week. I just wanted to open with some good news. I'm sure you guys all had the same feelings about this that I did when I woke up a while back here, I guess about a week or 10 days ago, and was greeted with the news that the Pheonix probe had landed safely, beautifully, near the North Pole of Mars. Really fantastic stuff. It's the kind of technical news that I think is particularly well received by victims of the knack, because there's, of course, a lot of knack, an awful lot of knack involved in that project, and it was just very inspiring to see that they were able to get that thing to land, and land the way it did without the more familiar beach ball approach, to land with rockets, just like the Viking landers went down and landed in 1976. You know, and I looked at the first pictures from Mars, and I knew there were many reasons why this project would appeal to SolderSmoke listeners. It's got antennas, it's got solar panels, it's probably not transmitting with a whole lot of power. It's really DX. Parachutes were involved. It's got everything, just about everything that we're interested in. I don't think it's running CW, but that's all right. And then, you know, it got even better. A few days later, they released that amazing picture of the thing under canopy, of the thing coming down. I've done this. This is particularly appealing to me. I've made a few parachute jumps, and so anything related to that, it kind of catches my attention. And the thought of having a picture of something parachuting on Mars. Well, I don't know if you guys heard, but you can take a look at it. I've got the picture on the SolderSmoke blog. It's the picture of the Pheonix lander under canopy descending to the Martian surface. The picture was taken by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the MRO, and what a great shot. You can actually see the shroud lines. Later on, I put that picture up on the website, on the blog at soldersmoke.blogspot.com. But a few days later, they released a kind of a wider field picture in which you could see it looks like this huge crater in the background, and you could see the little parachute and the lander below it. It looks like it's descending into the crater, but I understand that it wasn't actually going in. It landed aside the crater. Great stuff. Congratulations to NASA and the folks out there at JPL. What a great achievement. And then, of course, now we know that when it was coming in, apparently the rockets blew some of the dust away, and when the dust got blown away, there was ice visible right below it, and so off to a very good start on the science. Now, at the opposite end of the technology spectrum, completely at the opposite end, I've been busy with beacons on 10 meters. I've been talking about this. I've got pictures of my beacon operations up on the blog at soldersmoke.blogspot.com, and right now I'm using the K1EL keyer and a beacon transmitter board that I built many years ago back in Virginia. It's based on the a Doug DeMoss W1FB design it's called a Little Slugger, or a Little Slugger. It puts out about 1 watt on 10 meters CW. Mine is on 28.240, and I'm running it with my K1EL keyer. It just transmits and it transmits and gives my email address and asks for reports. And I'm getting them. I'm not running this thing all the time because I've got it on solar power, and my exposure to sunlight here is rather limited. So when the battery is charged up, I fire this thing up, and it generates reports. I'm getting picked up by a lot of the DX spot systems, and there are apparently some guys out there who specialize in spotting and reporting on beacons. I've gotten reports from folks in Germany, in the Netherlands, and from several stations in Italy, including several stations here in Rome, which is really good because this leads me to this allows me to get to know more of the Roman radio amateurs, more of my neighbors and fellow NAC victims here in the Eternal City. So the beacon has been great fun. I also want to point out I really like the word that they have in Italian for beacon. They a lot of times for the technical words it's kind of sad because in Italian and other languages they'll just use the English term. But I pulled out the big dictionary at work, and a radio beacon is formally known as a radiofaro, and faro means like lamp, like a lighthouse lamp. Sometimes in Spanish, faro is also used for the headlights on a car, but a bright light, and it conjures up. It evokes the image of a lighthouse, and so I think that's very appropriate. So I'm going to start a movement among radio amateurs with connections to Italian, and I'll enlist AA1TJ in this to henceforth in Italian refer to beacons by their true Italian name of Radio Faro. Anyway, my Radio Faro is doing well, and it's getting reports. I built, I think I might have mentioned this, I had to, the K1EL keyer is just a brilliant piece of gear, really great, and no complaints about it at all. But I had to build myself a little kind of keyer, a little. I'm a straight key guy, but I built myself a little keyer to because you have to put in by CW. You have to put the message into the beacon memory. So that's what I had to do, and I went out and I said, well, I've seen pictures of guys who've built what are known as side swipers. There's Billy. Here he is, joining us early this morning.
Hi.
I say hello to SolderSmoke listeners.
Hi.
All right. Billy's up a little early this morning. Anyway, I had to build what's affectionately known as a side swiper, and I don't know where this term comes from. Maybe somebody can explain to me. It's also known as a cootie keyer. Doesn't sound very good, but I use the traditional hacksaw blade. I only had one hacksaw blade, and it was in my hacksaw. So I prudently decided to make sure I cut all the bits of wood that I needed to cut before I removed the hacksaw blade and used it in the cootie keyer. You want to do it in the proper order. Anyway, I used some really light balsa wood that I picked up at the local art supply store, and soon the cootie keyer was cootieing. I discovered immediately that my horizontal CW skills are pretty awful. So it took me many tries to get the beacon message into the keyer. Again, no fault of K1EL. It's all operator problems at this end. But we finally got it in there. I put a picture of the cootie keyer up on the blog. You guys can see it. It's pretty rudimentary, and it definitely needs some work. The hacksaw blade bounces around quite a bit between characters, and it's kind of annoying, but I figure I'll work on it a bit. Right now, I'm working, though, on something else, on a 30-meter transmitter. And,
I'll talk about this in a minute. One thing I wanted to mention, I came across references to this, and it's a great book by a great ham radio author, somebody who I think doesn't get enough attention, doesn't get the attention he deserves. I'm talking about Adrian Weiss, Weiss, W0RSP, and I think back in the 70s he wrote two really great books. I've been looking at the bits and pieces of his book, The History of QRP in the United States. Really inspirational stuff. I mean, I got to read more of it. But I've read chapter 11, which deals with the early use of transistors and solid state gear by U.S. peers. Really inspirational stuff. Let's see. I'm getting the computer is beeping at me here. Hold on. Let me see. All right. Okay. We're all set. Anyway, very fine business, and I think Michael AA1TJ is the one who I think first mentioned this book recently. So thanks to Michael for that. And well, you'll hear more about Aid Weiss's book in a segment we're going to do a little bit later in the show. Hey, one thing I wanted to mention, sometimes we've had great luck and great success with our SolderSmoke correspondents. We've had them at Ozark Con. We've had them 2 years in a row now at 4 Days in May out in Dayton. I think we need one at an event that has been catching my attention for many years now, and that's the Flea at MIT. One of you guys, at least one of you guys, has to be going to the Flea at MIT. I wish I could go, but it's a bit out of range. And if somebody goes there, perhaps they could bring along an MP3 player and a digital camera and record it for us and send us some JPEGs and some WAV files, and we'll put a description on there, especially if you find stuff that, our stuff, QRP stuff, homebrew stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Stuff that would help victims of the knack. That'd be great. Hey, one other thing I've been working on and thinking about is diode balanced modulators. This is tied to the mixer madness, or the I guess the all mixed up about mixers period that I went through a while back. But as I was fooling around with my evolving 80 meter double sideband transceiver, I started thinking about the standard 2-diode balanced modulator circuit that we see popping up in many different circuits. It's just 2 diodes with a toroidal trifiller transformer at the input, a potentiometer connecting the 2 diodes at the output. You got RF in to the transformer, and you got AF in at another port on the transformer, and voila, you have double sideband suppressed carrier at the output. My question is the same question that I have with almost all these circuits, and that is, how do they do that? So I started thinking about it and reading up on it, and I'm getting close to really understanding it. It's a very simple little circuit, but there's a lot of I think it's a really beautiful circuit. There's a lot of a real beauty and elegance in that kind of design, and you have the balance, you have the suppression of the carrier. You have the whole saga of how mixers mix and how a simple diode, because of its nonlinear characteristic, can perform that mathematical magic of multiplying and not simply adding. It's been fun, and I've really enjoyed going through it. I'll write it up. I think it's the kind of thing that you need to write up and not describe. But not describe just on a podcast. But I think a lot of times we just use these circuits and say, okay, we know what the gazintas and the gazoutovs are, but I think it's very helpful. It's good for the soul of the home brewer to kind of delve into the details of the operation of circuits like this, and it certainly helps you when you're using them, because I for example didn't really understand why you had to get the levels of input to these circuits at certain levels, why you needed the RF input to be around 1 volt, and why it wasn't good to have the audio input too high. And it all has to do with which one of the inputs turns on and turns off the diodes. And I then, as I was studying the circuit, I had from my junk box a little board in which I had actually built exactly this circuit. And so as I was doing my reading and my pondering and my thinking, including, by the way, some thinking that took place with a little notebook while sitting on a beach known as La Ultima Spiaggia, the last beach, up near a beautiful little town, little medieval mountaintop wall town called Capalbio, which is on the border between Tuscany and Lazio, just a little bit up the coast from Rome. Anyway, there we were, and I had one of these moments where I thought, I think I can understand this now, and I whipped out my little pocket notebook and was drawing schematic diagrams of balanced modulator circuits there. But anyway, I would match that up with some experiments with the actual modulator circuit here, and I'd put some RF into one port, put some audio into the other, and then vary the levels and see how it affected the output. Great fun. Good for the soul. I recommend it. Let's see. A couple other things here to mention. I've been concerned about this for a while. I reported a few episodes back that Dan's Small Parts was temporarily closed down because Dad had an accident. I've been occasionally checking back. I'm concerned about Dan because he's been such a great parts supplier for all of us, for many of us, for so long, and concerned about his well-being out there. And I check back on his webpage every once in a while, and there's more information there on what happened to Dan. He had a bad fall on the 4th of May. He broke 6 ribs in both shoulders and had to spend 17 days in the hospital. He's on the way. He's on the mend. He's recovering. So that's what happened with Dan, and real sad to hear about his misfortune. That must have been very painful. But glad to hear that he's on the road to recovery, and best of luck to you, Dan. If anybody knows him, please send along our regards. Hendricks QRP kits. I see they have they're offering a new another edition of their capacitor kit. I got one a while back. I checked my stock. I don't need a new one because I'm still pretty good with it, but I recommend it. And what I did with mine was I got a board, just a piece of wood. I guess it's about 2.5 feet by 1 foot. I got some thumbtacks, and I took all the little they come in strips of capacitors, and I took each strip and I just thumbtacked them down onto this board. So that becomes my capacitor board. And it prevents me from having to rummage around in boxes when I'm looking for a particular capacitor. It's all right there on the board. I just grab the capacitor board, and I've marked with magic marker the values of each strip, and I can get to the capacitor very, very quickly. It really cuts down on time. When you're home brewing, it's amazing how much time you waste looking for stuff. And if you could keep stuff more organized, you can make better use of the limited time that we all have available for solder melting. So that's one of the ways I did it. And check out the website there for Hendricks QRP kits, and that capacitor kit's been a real big help for me. Something else. Something arrived we're not quite at SolderSmoke mailbag yet, but here's something that came in from Walford Electronics. His beautiful little homebrew magazine called Hot Iron, the Summer 2008 edition, issue 60 from Tim Walford of Walford Electronics and Upton Bridge Farms, Long Sutton, Langport, Somerset in the UK. Is called G3 PCJ, and you could check out Tim's kits and information for receiving Hot Iron at www.walfordelectronics.co.uk. There's always interesting stuff in this newsletter. It's in print form. I've kind of encouraged Tim to make it more kind of web available, and I think he might be working on that. But it's a pleasure to receive it in the mail, and I really thanked him for sending it. I love to see the news about the kits that he's developing and working on. This edition had a story that really caught my eye. It's part one of a series, and the title is "Whatever Happened to the Woodpecker." It's written by Richard Booth, G0TTL. What a great call! And I recognize the call. Richard's been making contributions to homebrew and QRP for a long time. Anyway, the article opens up, talk, talk, talk. It went for hours at a time. You guys who were on the air back then know what I'm talking about. This is the woodpecker. This is the thing that would show up in the ham bands with that really powerful signal. Just a real pain in the neck. There's all kinds of lore and stories about guys aiming their beams back over the North Pole at the at the evil Soviet woodpecker and retaliating, all this kind of stuff. But this article, this is something I didn't know. First, he describes the physical setup. It says here. Let me see if the antenna would be really of interest to us. The antenna that they used was codenamed Steel Yard, and the author says it was an apt description when you consider that the antenna was 380 meters high. For those of you who are thinking in imperial terms, just roughly think 380 yards high. At 380 meters high and 900 meters long, it was an intricate, freestanding construction with no guy wires, and it was in itself an impressive feat of engineering. It weighs an estimated 14,000 tons. That's an antenna, guys. I'll tell you what, you'd be proud to tell folks that you're running the Steel Yard, 380 meters high, 900 meters long. And it had a receiving array that was much the same. It says here, let me just read you a little bit about the power levels here. It says here, now if that isn't staggering enough, I need to mention the power levels used. They were planning for operation of this thing, even they wanted this thing to be usable even after a nuclear war in which the ionosphere was destroyed. So they built for high power. Under normal operation, the radar transmitter would run at 15 to 20 megawatts. That's megawatts. That's the big M, guys. That's not the little m. That's the big one. 15 to 20 megawatts. Under wartime conditions, assuming that power was available, it would run up to 40 megawatts. So when the balloon goes up, they throw the big switch. They forget the QRP stuff of 15 to 20 megawatts, and they go to 40 megawatts. They really wanted this thing to work. Okay, then you have to consider the gain of the antenna array. The effective radiated power is up at a colossal 180 to 300 megawatts. All right, guys, this is we're out of QRP territory here, obviously. It says here, forget your Foursquare on 80 meters. What you want is a Duga 3. Yeah. Yeah, put my beacon on that. I'll get lots of reports. All right. Here's the really interesting part for me. It says, and I didn't know this. It says, how do you get enough electricity to generate this sort of RF power? Answer, build your secret radar installation almost next door to a nuclear power plant and have very thick cables. Indeed. Good one, Richard. All right, now here's the really interesting part. On the 26th of April, 1986, the Duga 3 Woodpecker fell silent after 10 years of continuous operation. This date will forever be remembered as the day when Reactor 4 of the Chernobyl power station ran out of control following a series of safety failures, causing the reactor chamber to explode and the world's worst nuclear accident to take place. Wow. I didn't realize that Chernobyl marked a very dramatic and sudden end to the Woodpecker. Man, thanks very much to Tim and to Richard, G0TTL, for that article. I look forward to the future editions. It's just a good example of the kind of great stuff that you get in hot iron. All right. Let's see. A couple of notes here. I received word from a very kind radio amateur who must remain anonymous at this point that there is a copy of Solid State Design for the Radio Amateur available if we have a needy case. If anybody's out there whose circumstances make it particularly difficult for him or her to get SSDRA, the Solid State Design for the Radio Amateur, and you really need one, let me know. I as they used to say in the old mafia movies, I know a guy who's got one. Send me the info, and we'll try to put the buyers and the sellers, or the donors and the recipients together. I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to try this week to go back to our the old gong. The old gong. Hold on. Let's see. Hopefully I'll find it. If not, it'll be the new gong, and you'll know that I was unable to find it.
It's time for
SolderSmoke mailbag.
I love them.
Indeed.
A lot of mail this week. The first mailbag item we got is from Mike, WA6ARA. But and then you'll see shortly thereafter I ran into Mike on SolderSmoke, and that's going to become the second half of this week's show. But one thing Mike wanted me to say, in addition to everything we cover in that segment, he wants me to give, I guess we'd call a SolderSmoke shout out. Say hello to Solder Melter W6DWF, who's a regular listener and a long time solder melter. So hello to you, OM, and glad you're listening. Mark Z near Lowell, Indiana, has a 40 meter rig based on the Pocket Pixie design, and he's using one of these little wind-up radios. He's using it as an audio amplifier, and he just cranks it up, hooks up his little Pocket Pixie, which he's built in a tiny little box, into it, and has his own kind of homebrew powered audio amplifier there. I put pictures of this up on the SolderSmoke blog website at Blogspot at soldersmoke.blogspot.com. You'll see in the slideshow, you'll see some pictures of Mark's very fine business Pocket Pixie with the wind-up audio amp. Rick, KC0PET, he's developed some 99-cent paper clips and paddles. And he, very interesting, he comments on Daka Jack's comments regarding long-haul advanced meditative techniques. These were the techniques that Jack used to copy the moon bounce echoes of AA1TJ's Zener diode transmissions at microwatt levels. Very impressive, of course. He is using a related technique. I don't know if it's been reported so far up to this point, but he calls it IPT, which is a technique that he refers to as information processing telepathy, IPT. Okay, fine business that on that, Rick, and perhaps you should get together with Daka Jack and combine IP with the advanced meditative techniques, and who knows what you'll hear. Ramakrishnan, our friend, sends in a report from Singapore. He's there. He's getting set up. He's asked for my advice on how to get an antenna out of a high-rise apartment building. Ramakrishnan, I'll be sending you some more information on the techniques that I've used here in Rome. They may be applicable in Singapore. Good luck to you on that. Niels PE1OIT, who we've heard from many times over the years, he points out that we should all be taking a look at Robert A. Pease of National Semiconductor, who is definitely one of us. He's got some really great stuff on his website on technical topics related to National Semiconductor products and homebrewing, electronic theory. And Niles puts it really well. He says Robert's got a big long beard that makes him look like, quote, a member of ZZ Top, but with the knack. Got to check that out. I'll try to get the URL there, but if you just Google him, Robert A. Pease, Pease, and National Semiconductor, you'll find it. Good technical stuff there on the web. Jerry Feltz, our man in Dakota, NR5A, has written in this morning, cursing me and SolderSmoke for causing him to get addicted to yet another ham radio sub-hobby, and that is the beacons. Talk of beacons in recent weeks has caused Jerry to get involved in 10-meter beacons. All I can say, Jerry, is that I'm sorry for doing this to you, but actually this is not really a bad one because it's not all that time-consuming. This is a good hobby activity for people with a limited amount of time, because you just turn the thing on and it just does its thing all day, and it's once you get it going, it's pretty much, it runs on its own. That's the beauty of the whole beacon thing. All right. Now, let's see, a couple other things here. What was I going to mention? My beacon reports. I got a couple of beacon reports coming in, but I already mentioned those. That brings us to a bit of SolderSmoke serendipity this week. I haven't been firing up Echolink. Been busy with other things, but something told me the other day that I should fire it up, and I did. And I had a really nice conversation with an old timer in New Zealand. And then, just as I was about ready to, the next morning I got up and it was the software was still running, and I was looking at the screen, and a very familiar call sign popped up. WA6ARA, Mike, our friend out there in the Mojave Desert. Mike has been active in QRP and home brewing for many years. I often look through the old issues of QRP Quarterly, and I see his call in there, providing sage advice and an interesting commentary on circuits and technical problems going back a long time. He's been a regular SolderSmoke contributor, sending in band sweep segments and email and comments. Always very welcome. He's a reader of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, solar power enthusiast, and we'll have to talk about this at greater length sometime, but also a big satellite guy and involved in satellites for a long time. So there I was. I saw his call pop up. I gave him a call, and we had a really nice SolderSmoke QSO on Echolink, getting us back to the Echolink roots of the SolderSmoke show. So without further ado, I'll fire up our conversation with Mike. I hope it's just the first of many. Here we go.
WA6ARA. Okay, Mike, great. Well, it's terrific. I think the last time we exchanged emails, or it might have been a while before that, you were going off on a trip, and you'd taken with you Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and you also said that you had, I think, a number of SolderSmoke podcasts loaded up into into a Zen MP3 player. So I wonder if you're off on another Zen-like trip this time. Mojave Desert. It sounds like a really cool location, and it must be a great location for QRP and ham radio. Not much to report here. I've been playing around with my 10-meter beacon, and that's been chirping away. But I'm limited because my solar panels are not well situated, and the beacon draws a little bit more current than it should because I leave the oscillator stages on all the time. So I've got to get some more. I've got to reposition the solar panels and or reduce the power consumption of the beacon because I don't have enough sunlight to run the thing solar power every day. So it's a constraint. It's a problem. I imagine you don't have too many solar power limitations there at your location, Mike. WA6ARA I0/N2CQR. Go ahead.
I2/N2CQR WA6ARA. No, not a whole lot. Supposedly we're just about the highest solar days per year in the country. I think I'm about 8 miles from Inyokern, which I think has, I'd say 350 cloudless days a year, something like that, which is kind of typical. And my whole station is solar powered, and then the whole house is actually. It's a passive solar design that I built, and I also have a 1.2 kW solar voltaic cell panel outside, and I feed the power back in and spin the meter backwards. Yeah, but most of the time it actually spins the other direction. So I make about 70% of my power. And we don't have too much trouble with too much sun, with not enough sun, I should say. But we're starting to go into the hot times, and pretty soon it's going to get really hot. In fact, as it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, it was 110 already, and rapidly cooled off for some reason. I remember that. And in fact, we're on our trip. We're going to the exact same spot, a little place called Hat Creek near Lassen National Park, or near Lassen National Park. I'll get it out here. And going to enjoy some time there. We've got a hot air balloon triple ride all set up. Going to a experimental aircraft airplane meet, and then visiting grandkids and kids and all that sort of stuff. So we're having a real good time. It should be most enjoyable. And I got the trusty KX1 and FT817 already packed away and ready to go on the air. Back to you, Bill. WA6ARA.
All right, Mike. That's great. Well, I'm not completely at the other end of the. I guess I am at the other end of the sophistication scale on solar power. You probably heard me refer to my Volkswagen solar panels. I have 2 of them. These are the ones that they sell with they used to sell with the new Volkswagen, so that they wouldn't drain down, so the electronics in the car wouldn't drain down the battery during shipment and sale. Yeah, I picked them up on eBay. I'm not sure how much power they put out, but they charge my 12. They kind of trickle charge my 12-volt gel cell pretty well, and I don't even have. I do kind of the Armstrong method of power of solar charge controlling. That is, I keep an eye on the current going into the battery and the voltage across it, and when it's full, I disconnect the panels. And I don't think I have enough. I don't think there's any possibility of me getting really a serious overcharge situation here, because the panels the 2 of them are pretty small, and I just stick them in the window here of the shack, and I think there's only a few hours each day where the sun is actually shining on them. But this is a big improvement. Rome solar in solar terms, Rome is a big improvement over London. Of course, we're much further south, and we're all the stories about Italian sunshine are true. so we're better off. I might actually one of these days try to get the panels up on the roof and positioned properly and get a real proper solar operation going here. And fine on the trip and then taking the portable rigs. I wonder what you got on the workbench, Mike. What are you working on these days? What are you building? And what's happening in the QRP homebrew world there at ARA? Back to you.
Oh, okay. Fine business. WA6ARA. Well, what I had on the bench, and I actually cleared it off because I had to work on some other things for the trip real quick here, but I was rebuilding a PM1 that I had purchased at Pacificon a couple of years back, and been kind of playing with that slowly every so often, and finally got the VFO percolating along, and was going to do some more work. Yeah, the other thing I've been starting to work on is I think I might have written. I'm not sure if I wrote to you about that or not, but a rig that I affectionately called iBorg, which is a kind of a conglomeration of all the other rigs and piece parts and whatever that I've built over the years. Kind of a slowly evolving rig, and that presently has a neophyte in it and it's not a twofer. I'm trying to remember what the transmitter was. Can't remember now. But anyway, it's a small. I think it might have been one of W1FB's 2-transistor type setups. It's something that I ugly put together. Oops, I guess that's I see my friend Dennis just did log on. Okay, great. I'll talk to him in a little bit. So anyway, it's kind of a idea that I'm just kind of throwing around, kind of throwing a lot of circuits together and being able to continuously change it and pull parts out, put them back in, modify them at will and such. So other than that, and getting ready for field day, that's coming up, and we're getting ready to do a local field day. I ran a class, and we graduated 19 new technicians, and actually 3 of them went on to general. So we're trying to get them out and on the air here in a couple of more weeks. Back to you, WA6ARA.
Yeah, it's all coming back to me now. I'm sorry, Mike. It's early in the morning, and the coffee hasn't really fully kicked in yet. The PM1, I remember you talking about that, and then it just happened that a few days later, I was looking through an old, I think it was an old QST, or it might have been the back of an old ARRL publication. No, I think now I'm thinking it might be the RSGB handbook. You know, they have the ads in the back, and they had an ad for Ten-Tech gear, and it showed different bits of different generations of Ten-Tech gear, and of course there back at the very beginning was the PM1, and I guess that must have come out early 70s, and I can remember sort of almost lusting after one as a new teenage ham. It just looks so cool with the that little dial mechanism there on the front, and that must be you must have discovered that this is a pretty rare piece of gear, probably in as much demand as a Heathkit HW8, sort of like that, probably even more. Yeah, so wow, good luck with the PM1 and the iBorg. Yeah, I remember your message on the iBorg. You and I were talking about having sort of bits of boards and everything around and slapping things together. I think I told you I was when I was cleaning off the workbench, and the junk box, I noticed that I had a whole kind of collection of Manhattan-style boards with bits of circuitry on it from projects that had gone wrong. the whole thing when the whole thing came together, it just wouldn't work. But I knew that the individual circuit boards in there, some of them were good, and so I have like a one board with an NE602 mixer circuit on it, another with a 2-diode balanced modulator, many failed RF amplifier projects for failed because they turned into oscillators instead of amplifiers. But you know how that goes. And the box is I even have some of these old little kits, the SB1 kits, the PA1 kits. Remember those? I think from one of the crystal companies used to sell these little kits on boards that were about an 1.5 by 1.5 inches. And I somewhere along the line I picked up a bunch of those. And now they're all in a box on the shelf, and the box is labeled boards that may someday become a rig. So who knows? They have potential. WA6ARA I0/N2CQR.
Okay, WA6ARA. I was saying when the PM1, PM2s came out. I think it was about 1970, and that's when I got my novice ticket. And I agree. I lusted after them. I thought they were the greatest thing, and didn't quite have enough money to do it. My father was a ham, and he didn't know. I don't believe he ever approved of QRP, shall we say. And so what he after I upgraded to General, he awarded that not with a PM. I think I wanted a PM3A at the time or something. He awarded that with an HW101 kit, which was fine, and that was a good radio. Kind of large, definitely not QRP, but and I always wanted one, and I look at them every so often, and it happened to be that I picked this up at Pacificon, and it was part of Jim WA6 GERs, the NorCal #1, the guy who started NorCal with Doug Hendricks out of his estate, and so I couldn't pass that up. Got a good price on it to boot, and it's got a lot of good karma. So I thought, that was a good radio to have. So yeah, and it's like I said, it doesn't work. I got the VFO working, and I've got the audio amplifier working. It's a mixer that isn't working right, and also I'm getting RF out of the transmitter, but nowhere near the power level I should. And I do remember those. I think they were called the OX series or something like that from International Crystal. I could probably still have some of those boards someplace, because I remember buying mixer, an RF amplifier, a couple of oscillator kits to build a 2-meter down converter for receive, and I never knew really whether it worked. I built it, tuned it all up, could never hear anything, so I really was never sure that whether it worked, but oh well, that's how it is. Anyway, back to you, Bill. WA6ARA. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say something. Your audio is absolutely outstanding. All the various Echolink stations, I think your audio is absolutely outstanding. It's WA6ARA.
Well, thanks for saying that, Mike. It's this is the same. This is the mic that produces SolderSmoke, and it's really pretty pathetic. I should put a picture of it up on the blog. I think I took a picture of it, and I don't know if I put it up on the blog. I think I will. It's it's a standard old computer mic, and I've got it held up by the third hand, the ubiquitous third hand from Radio Shack that we all probably have floating around on our workbenches. And then there's also a pretty good quantity of duct tape holding it together, which is appropriate. And then I have a bit of styrofoam wrapped around the top, because guys were complaining that there was too much kind of popping on the P sounds. So I guess it's appropriate that it's kind of a homebrew microphone for a show about homebrew. And then I did get it after my computer died. I got reports that the audio improved significantly when I went back to the old computer, and because the old computer I think probably has a better sound card in it, and so every dark cloud has a silver lining. And so the demise of my E-Machine's computer, while painful, caused me to move back to this old one. I was thinking about, you mentioned something that you built as a kid and didn't get it working, and I think about that sometimes because I came really close to getting a receiver going. I think I might have mentioned this a couple times on SolderSmoke, but I must have been about 15 or 16 years old, and I really wanted to build a receiver, and there was an article that appeared in one of the ham radio magazines. It was early 70s. I've never been able to find the article again. It was a Varactor controlled receiver, and I'm thinking about it. It must have been a direct conversion receiver, and it was a solid state, and I really had very little idea what I was doing, but I remember I actually etched a circuit board for it, got my fingers green with the chemicals and spilled it all over my clothes, and probably created a real hazmat situation, but back then nobody cared. And I built this thing and didn't get it working, but I know that I was so close, and I know what the problem was. The local oscillator just wasn't oscillated, and if I had known, or if I had the internet, or if I had somebody around who could have pointed me in the right direction, just by probably changing the values of those feedback caps, or maybe popping in a different transistor for the local oscillator, I could have made that thing run. And who knows? I could have gotten more enthused, and as it was, I kind of fell away from ham radio for a little while. But I don't know. It was a shame, and I wish I had gotten that thing working. So I know what you mean about projects that it didn't quite take off. Now we have the internet, and that helps quite a bit. You mentioned Good Karma from the PM rig. I just was this week was on the GQRP list, an Italian ham in the Italy 2 station, Paolo, was asking for a 14040 crystal because he needed it to for a 4-meter rig. We have 4 meters here in Europe, and he needed it to generate some frequencies for a 4-meter rig. And I searched my junk box, I couldn't find one. But then he wrote back, he said, "Don't worry, G3RJV has found the crystal for me and is going to send it to me." And I said, "Well, you got the crystal from George Dobbs. That one comes with a lot of good luck attached to it. So I'm sure you'll have good luck on 4 meters with that particular rock." WA6ARA I0/N2CQR.
I0/N2CQR, WA6ARA. Yeah, oh, definitely. That'd be great. Yeah, it's thinking back like that, before I was a ham, I attempted to build a shortwave receiver, and same as you, never got it to work at all. And as it turns out, I remembered what the book looked like, and I found it. This was one of the electronic project books that they used to produce a lot of, and you never see anymore. And it was, of course, in the library, and I found it again in a used bookstore, so I picked it up, and I have that now. One of these days I am going to build that. And of course, I didn't know what it was looking at it in those days, but now I realize it was a very simple receiver. Basically, it was a crystal receiver with a audio amplifier behind it and an RF amplifier ahead of it, and that tuned more or less the shortwave bands. I never heard a thing on it, but that's okay. I did build before I was got my novice, I built a single tube, used a 3A4 tube regen out of the out of an old Boy Scout handbook at that, or Boy Scout radio merit badge, I think it was, and that worked great. Actually, it was incredibly sensitive and tuned up and down, and had no idea what frequency I was on, but I I heard stations, and that's all I was interested in. So that was an awful lot of fun. I really enjoyed building a lot of stuff, and then trying to make it work. Although I would have to say my success rate was not very good, maybe 50%, maybe less. I did save my first, well, actually my second transmitter as a novice, 12BY7, driving a 6146, kind of a common configuration of the day, and I look at the underside of it now, and the wiring and the soldering is horrible. It's embarrassing. It looks like a rat's nest, and everything's going everywhere, and probably half the joints are cold solder joints and what have you. But the darn thing did work. I worked a lot of novices in those days. That was always a lot of fun in those days. Wow, come home every day after school, and you always find somebody. Several people actually. That was the days. And nowadays it seems like between work and everything else, if I can get on once or twice a week, I'm doing good at times. But well, that's the nice part about going out and taking a few days off and camping out and what have you. Just sitting in the hammock chair and playing a little CW and snoozing and waking up and playing some more CW and just kind of whiling away the day. Oh, I got a timeout. Oh boy, talking too long. WA6ARA.
WA6ARA, I0/N2CQR. Yeah. I was reading Chapter 11 of the History of QRP in the United States by Adrian Weiss. I think it's W0RSP. I hope I got his call right. But what an amazing book. Michael Alpha 1 TJ, AA1 TJ, had mentioned it to me, and I'd never read this thing, but it really is a great piece of work. And I was just looking at Chapter 11, which is the chapter on the original early use of solid state rigs in ham radio, going back into the late 50s, late 50s kind of period. No, I think maybe even starting in early 50s. But about how the pioneers of transistor circuitry were. He said that Aid wrote that they were plagued by kind of big variations in the parameters of transistors, even of the same type. They would get one would have a whole lot more gain than another, and all kinds of changes and variations in the very non-standard values for the transistors. And he noted in a parentheses that even in the early 70s, hams were plagued by that, and so it made me think that might have been one of the reasons that my little direct conversion receiver might not have worked. The other thing that I didn't realize, and I think that it's kind of a hard thing for especially for teenagers to understand, is that the circuit that I was working with, it might have come out of 73 magazine, and I love 73 magazine, but let's face it, there was no technical review or anything like that with 73. It was just whatever anybody wrote in. Wayne kind of I think just put it in the magazine. He never promised anything more, but I had this kind of I guess kind of teenage notion that if it was in print, it must be true and accurate. And so now, of course, I'm older and wiser and realize that mistakes are made, as they say, and especially between the designer's notes and the actual publication in a book or a magazine, there could be mistakes in the circuitry and the schematic, and things might just be wrong. But I didn't know that, so I never even occurred to me that there could be a major problem there, and there might have been. And the other thing that I remember was that I didn't understand the circuit at all. To me, it didn't look. When I read the schematic, I know that I didn't see it as a collection of stages. I just saw it as a massive circuitry, and when I laid out the PC board, I probably just did it that way. So there was probably all kinds of opportunities for unwanted feedback and inputs right next to outputs and lines crossing each other, and a mess. You mentioned your looking at one of your early homebrew rigs. One of mine was I didn't even realize it was a homebrew project at the time, but when I got my general class license, the guys at the local radio club gave me a Heathkit HW32A, the monoband 20-meter phone SSB a transceiver. It's sort of it looks sort of like an HW101. The circuitry is a bit different, of course, and it's monoband. But they gave it to me, and I remember when they gave it to me, it felt quite light. It didn't feel like a real tube-type radio, and the reason it felt light, of course, it didn't have a power supply. And I kind of looked at them when they gave it to me, and I said, well, what about the power supply? And they kind of went, well, just build one. They said, go get an old TV and the ARRL handbook and build yourself a power supply for this thing. And it was treated, and I guess this must have been around 1973, 1974. It was treated as almost a kind of a trivial project, almost like putting a power cord on the back of something these days. And I did it, and somehow I managed not to blow myself up, which was another miracle, because I was sitting there kind of on the floor of the den. I didn't even have a proper workbench, and fooling around with something that was putting out 700 or 800 volts, all kinds of huge electrolytic capacitors in there. It's one of those things when you look back and you say, well, I don't know how I survived. I don't, but I did. I got the thing on the air and used it for quite some time. And again, it wasn't even considered a homebrew project. I guess today you'd be considered some sort of a teenager who did that would be considered some sort of homebrew hero. WA6ARA I0/N2CQR.
Just based upon you kind of hitting my brain here a little bit, I'm going to throw it in the bag and take it with me. I think, I don't know if you've read it or not, one of the best parts that I like of the Pease. Yep. A friend of mine gave me a call there on 2 meters. Is a section on Chapter 8, and it's called the Pecos River QRP. Well, it's probably the same, page 135. Really good story about a QRP operation, and so I just want curious, have you read it all the way through, or are you jumping around, and whether you've read that section? Go ahead.
No, I haven't read that section, Mike, but I'm intrigued. Tell me, what's it about?
Basically, it's about a guy back in starting around 1934, and being of somewhat restrictive resources, and moving out from Florida to the New Mexico, Colorado areas, a couple of different stories, and his basically his QRP adventures, both in terms of building a nice receiver, building a small transmitter, and working away in an area that at the time was considered fairly rare for hams. And I don't know why these two stories have really always just kept me interested, and kept me, I've gone back to that, and just about every time I open up this book, I end up reading that story. And I'm not sure why. It just really does interest me. So I would really strongly recommend you give that a whirl. It's only a few pages long, and see what you think about it. It's WA6ARA.
Yeah, I commented on the blog that we're really fortunate to have a guy like Aid writing on this stuff. And I in the book I saw his bio with a picture that looked like it must have been from 1973, 1974. It's great that we have such a talented writer producing this kind of material. And I said, it's also inspirational for those of us who are not professional engineers. That Adrian's degree is he's got a PhD in Renaissance literature. So, yay, go English majors. I also saw I read the bit about his conversation with the old man with HPM, and his discussion of appliance operators and the hams of yesteryear and all that, adopting new technology. I got a chuckle because I read it right, and there was all kinds of the old man in that conversation was kind of railing against the move towards automation in ham radio, where and he was warning that we were getting to the point where humans would be completely removed from the process, and you just have two stations talking to each other. And I agreed with the sentiment and the thrust of it all, but I was reading it at the time where I was almost at the same time loading into my K1EL automatic keyer the automatic message from my 10-meter beacon with the intention of producing a little station that would be transmitting automatically while I wasn't even around. So I'm sure the old man would approve, but he might be a little bit uncomfortable about the whole automated side of the thing. But a great book, and makes me want to get the other one, the joy of QRP. Really great stuff. WA6ARA I0/N2CQR.
I0/N2CQR WA6ARA. Yeah, boy, getting tongue-tied here. Yeah, that's also a great book. Listening a little bit here on 6 meters too. 6 meters has been open quite a bit recently, although it's not open right now. It was open last night. Pretty weak signals up until about 10:30. So anyway, I'm going to have to go QRT here. Got some things we got to do. Got to take care of. It's coming up on 10 o'clock at night, and so over to you, Bill. I0/N2CQR WA6ARA.
Okay, Mike, real good. Well, this was a really great surprise. I saw that call pop up, and it must have been ham radio karma, because I haven't been firing up Echolink at all for the last several months, and just started this morning, or started yesterday, I think, and to run into you here was a great surprise.
Thanks for that, Mike, and hope to talk to you again real soon. Hope you guys enjoyed this issue of SolderSmoke. We'll be back in next week or so. I've been trying to do them every 10 days or 2 weeks, and I hope you keep on listening. Please keep those cards and letters and emails coming in. We really like to receive them. The feedback's very welcome, and please do check out the blog. It's we're trying to kind of bridge the gap between SolderSmoke segments for those of you who need who need a bit more help with your knack symptoms. 7-3 from Rome.